Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was some cycled production racing. The first round was with some Corvette Z06 at the Sebring Club Circuit. The first corner is notorious for incidents here. There was a little bit of pushing, there was a little bit of shoving, there was a few cars that were knocked sideways. Husky was involved in some of that. We all got through there mostly unscathed. There's a little bit of bumping, there's a bit of aero damage I think, but nobody suffered major damage. As we run down towards the back straight, everybody runs wide through there. I get it wrong, the two cars in front of me get a little bit more wrong than I do. These Corvettes don't have the greatest brakes in the world. We're then all going in 2x2s as we go through the next couple of corners. I then get a slight tag again, and I'm going a little bit sideways. I'm on the grass, car behind me on the grass. So it's a bit chaotic on the opening lap. There is always somebody as well who forgets that we're driving on the shorter circuit. I don't know how you manage that when we start in a completely different place to drive the club circuit. But that pretty much ended Husky's race, who got destroyed in that. He took a ton of damage from that collision. As we round the final corner, we were all pretty close together. I was surprised by just how close this field was to start with. There's a very laggy car in front of us. I'm being forced to go the long way around on the outside of somebody as we run in towards the first corner. You can't really do much on the outside there, and in the end I end up losing a position. Somebody behind took a chance, dove up the inside, and I lost one of those places. In the background there's a pink car off the road. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on this opening lap. I'm now stuck in a three-way battle over, I don't even have a clue what position number this was. There was lots of change in position in the early stages of this race. I got assisted, helped along into making that move. Hadn't really intended on. I got a little bit of a nudge and I found myself on the outside, going a bit sideways. The car behind me is going sideways, and I now have whatever position it was I was fighting for. I can have a very brief moment to breathe, and it was all of a second as I run wide at the next corner. Too wide behind me. There's a look kind of getting up the inside of me as well, but yeah, can't quite fit in there. It was a rather hectic first couple of laps. Yeah, it was. I was surprised actually. These were supposed to be the trickiest cars to drive here, and they're certainly the hardest to control. And the opening laps were pretty fighty. There was lots of overtaking going on. This track's a pretty good track for overtaking. In general, I'm not a massive fan of Sebring. The normal circuit is a little bit too long for my liking, and this one, the downside with this track is there isn't any pit lane. But there are plenty of good places to overtake. That corner there, we see many cars run wide there. I think almost everybody at some point outbraked themselves into that corner. It's a tough corner, one that I'm never very good at either. This white and red Corvette is making a decent move to get past the yellow Corvette on that section. I'm still battling away with a black Corvette in front of them. I'm trying to go around the outside. It's always a tough move to do, going around somebody there. And while we were battling, of course, we're slowing each other down, and this group of cars are now caught up to us as well. The right and red Corvette is going to go all the way around the outside of the final corner. That's a tough move to pull off, especially when we're all driving exactly the same cars. All of these cars have got the tuning and upgrades forced off, so they're all completely stock. So it's all about driver skill. The only slight difference in them is the sort of levels of damage on them. I then find myself again stuck on the outside of the first corner. I try to do a bit of a cutback this time around and can't quite get it to work. I do get a better drive though as we go down the back straight. And yeah, I spent pretty much half of my race on the outside of that first corner. Yeah, it wasn't a huge amount of fun. I've got a good drive down this back straight, but can't really do much with it. The white and red Corvette has a look up the inside, a little bit of a bump. I think somebody in the background outbraked themselves, not entirely sure. And again, two of us are now trying to go around the outside of the black Corvette. Everybody's sliding all over the place, trying to keep these cars under control. And the Corvette that we've been following for all of this has made up 2 or 3 places. I'm having resumed my battle with the black Corvette. Yeah, these are not the easiest cars in the world to drive. They aren't the best handling of vehicles. They are also rather slidey. It's not very hard to convince them to go sideways. There was an equally exciting battle going on at the front, as again going too wide through here. There's a cutback going on. This is the curb that's quite well known for rolling cars. Luckily, because these are being run completely stopped, there isn't really any fear of rolling these vehicles. Overtake of the evening, though, goes to the white and orange Corvette for going completely around the outside of somebody on the final corner. As you saw, the other Corvette went around the outside of me, but I was very slow going into that corner. That's a really tough place to overtake when you both get a decent drive out of the corner before it to go round the outside there. It's pretty damn impressive, and then they mess it all up with outbraking themselves into the first corner. Again, it's another place that is very, very easy to outbrake yourself. Is these cars, yeah, they don't stop very well, and they're pretty damn quick as well. There was all sorts of action going on further back. Yeah, there was a lot of battling going on in this race. I was surprised when I was looking through the replay. There might have been a bit of a coming together between the pink car and the multicoloured thing, and they ended up falling off the road in this black car. It was in quite a lot of trouble at the first corner with everybody around him. Has now got a nice bit of space. The real trick really to doing well with these is, first of all, don't get damaged. When you're running cars that are absolutely the same, if you get any damage at all, it is quite noticeable. And while, okay, these cars aren't exactly the handling machines that some of the vehicles we drive, even if you take damage to your aero, you're going to be slower on the straights. And yeah, that's not a good thing. You need every little bit of speed you can get when you're racing with equal cars, and it will affect the handling a little bit. If you get caught sort of internal damage, then yeah, that's the even worse. I outbraked myself at the third corner or whatever and dropped a couple of places. I was finding myself yet again on the outside of a yellow Corvette as we go into the first corner. This time it almost worked. I almost managed to make the move stick, couldn't quite do it, as I had to tuck in behind him as we go down the back straight. Yeah, my car was fairly well off. It wasn't the worst damaged car. As you'll see, I've got a lot more straight line speed. I can duck out of the slipstream, but it also wasn't in a particularly healthy condition. The yellow car, though, outbrakes himself, does very, very well to avoid having a collision, taking one of us off. Managed to kind of fire his car in between us and avoid having a crash. Yeah, that spot, so many cars outbrake themselves. That's where I outbrake myself as well. He's just trying that little bit too hard to make up positions, and yeah, that's the kind of thing that can happen. The battle for the lead was back on after the slight off of the white and orange Corvette. He caught up and was going to have a look around the outside at turn 3 again. This is one of the most popular overtaking spots, and he's just about got his car far enough alongside and can stay on the inside for the next corner. Although if the multicoloured car can stay on the outside, you can sometimes get up the inside of the next one. In this case, he hasn't quite got the drive. He, though, outbrakes himself into this section and has a little bit of an accident. Now, this is what you're supposed to do, people. If you tap the car in front of you and they lose control, you're supposed to wait for them and let them recover. In the end, no harm was done there. They did allow third and fourth to catch quite close up to the back of them. But, you know, if you take somebody out by accident, like that is, it's very easy, especially in these cars, to outbrake yourself just that little bit. You're supposed to wait, let them back past, and then you can go back to carry on racing. And in this case, no harm was done by sort of waiting where he did. That move around the outside, though, was to be the defining moment for the win of this race. The third place car was pretty damn close now. I don't know what happened to the black and white car. Black and white. I got momentarily confused. I don't know where he went. He must have had a spin or an off somewhere. And the first 3 positions were actually going to be very, very close on the road. Yeah, I was surprised the amount of close racing that was going on with these cars, because these were supposed to be the toughest cars to drive here. You know, the Corvettes, they're not bad cars, don't get me wrong, but yeah, they're not supposed to be the easiest thing in the world to drive. And the top 5, you could just see me in the background there, were all within sort of shot on the main straight. Yeah, there'd been a few collisions, but it had been a surprisingly good race. We move on to the second race at Suzuka, where we were going to be running some Honda Civic Type Rs. Daniel had actually turned up for this race. It was amazing, and here is his car as we go into the first corner. It's a little bit less manic, this first corner. It's a little bit slower run into it, and it's quite a wide corner as we're all going sort of 2 and 3 wide through there. You can get away with doing that on this circuit, whereas you can't on other places. As we come up to the hairpin, though, there is the biggest crash in FailRace history, in the versus community history anyway. I'm somewhere out on the dirt, out on the sand, trying to avoid it all. What happened, from what I have seen, is somebody got into the side of Husky's car. Husky was in second at this point, and in trying to brake and avoid Huskies, they were very, very slow in the middle of the hairpin, and the person behind them didn't have time to stop. And when you're in basically third out of a 15 car or 16 car race, can't remember how many were in this, and you are parked in the middle of the hairpin with everybody come flying into it, that's what happens. Pretty much 2 cars got away without damage in that, I believe. I think I only got a tiny bit because I escaped on the sand. Husky and the guy who was in first at the time both escaped. They missed the incident entirely. Most cars just had sort of aero damage, as a lot of people have managed to slow down before hitting it. However, there were some, such as Daniel's Civic here, that was very poorly. There was another couple of cars as well that were quite broken. There was a rather interesting moment coming into this first corner on the second lap when we tried to go 4 wide at one point. Mid-corner there, we are 4 wide through the first corner. I in the end run out of room. That was a little bit interesting and rather scary. As I said, you can get away quite easily running 2 wide through that first corner. But yeah, 4 wide was not that much fun. Somebody outbrakes themselves into the hairpin. Almost manages to roll their car, not sure how they did that one, and yeah, snagged the back of somebody else. The hairpin is one of the better overtaking opportunities at Suzuka. It's a little bit of a tough track to overtake here, as they're going 2 wide behind, just at the back of shot there through the Dunlop Bridge. Yeah, it's a tougher place to overtake at Suzuka, but the hairpin is probably your best bet. You can try and do this. In any other day, this probably would have been the overtake of the evening. Somebody goes very wide in the background and falls off the road. You can do that. You can go around the outside of somebody on the final corner. That's an impressive overtake. It is harder to do this sort of thing when you are driving all equal cars because you've all got the same amount of grip. Admittedly, as I said with the first race, there is an element of damage. It's very, very hard to tell quite what levels of damage were on various cars. I can look at the replay telemetry, but that's often a little bit wonky. So I suspect some of these cars were more heavily damaged than others, so they weren't handling quite as well. They weren't quite as fast in a straight line. Either way, that was still quite an impressive overtake as these are sort of the midfield battles. There wasn't a huge amount of action going on in this race. I was locked in a battle for 3rd position. As I said, I came away relatively unscathed. I had a little bit of aero damage, but nothing major. I believe the blue car that I was racing with had a little bit more damage than me, as I was pretty much all over the back of him, trying to find a way past. Had a look at the inside at Dunlop. They're not going to get past there. I was a little bit too far back, and again, as we run down towards the hairpin, I'm having a look on the inside. There's not quite space there. Yeah, I may have had to take to the grass a little bit to avoid that one. However, despite having a fairly terrible exit onto the back straight, you'll see how much faster I was in a straight line. These are equal cars, so the only thing I can presume is he had quite extensive aero damage. And now I find myself on the outside of the final corner. I'm going to have to go the long way round as well. This is, by the way, this is how you give each other enough racing room. There's so many times I see people squeeze you out wide on these corners. It's fairly straightforward. You know, there's plenty of space on this track, and again, you'll see as we go 2 wide through the first corner, we're each giving the other person plenty of space. Sure, he pushes me towards the edge of the track, provided you leave a car's width, that's fine, and then I get past. Yeah, he could have come across more and he probably would have ended up having a crash and taken us both off. So it's better that you lose the position. He's only lost 1 position, whereas if he crashes into me and we get into a tangle, there's 2 cars behind us that will probably go past. It's better just to let the car go, just to give it enough space to race. You know, you don't want to be having crashes because you will lose more time in a crash than you would if you just let them go. Now, Daniel had taken a trip to the pits and was now in a rather fast car compared to those around him, and he got a little bit caught out there by just how slow some of the damaged cars were as he goes straight into the back of somebody. Yeah, this was the slight downside to this race. I think why this wasn't quite as good a race as some we've had is, you know, when you have a crash like that, you end up with a lot of broken cars, and with the varying degrees of damage, as I said, with cars that are equal, it makes quite a big difference to your sort of lap times. So the field did spread out quite a lot. Also, if you do have mechanical damage, it's a very good idea to go to the pits. I don't know why people carry on with these horrendously broken cars, apart from tracks, of course, that don't have pit lanes. If there's a pit lane, you might as well put it into the pits. You're not going to fix aero damage, but you might as well get your car working again, because Daniel was making his way through the field, which he wouldn't have done if he just carried on going around. As I said, not much happened in the middle part of this race. Having cleared the car that was in third, I then set about chasing down the guy that was in second. As we come on to the final lap, I was catching about a second a lap, and this was the final lap, and I had 2 chances to get past. I was too far back as we came sort of past the Dunlop Bridge. The best chance is probably into this hairpin. He kind of goes a little bit defensive. Don't think he realised quite how close I was as I have a dive up the inside. A little bit of a bump there. I really don't think he actually realised quite where I was, how far I was behind him. Otherwise he would have gone defensive. And I managed to get the move done before the final corner. At the front though, Husky had a pretty uneventful race. Having survived the first lap crash, he was pretty much gone, didn't really have to push himself. I think I had a slightly faster lap, but Husky would pretty much just cruise around. There was nobody anywhere near, and that really is the advantage of getting away at the front. And certainly not making any mistakes. I think Daniel ended up somewhere down in the lower bit of the top 10, although not really surprising considering the amount of damage he had at the start of that race. We move on to the third and final race, which was some Elise 99 Elise Sports or something. I can't remember the proper name of these cars at the Kamino Vue circuit. I haven't raced around here for a while. I quite like this track. Apparently not many people like these cars though. Everybody's complaining about how twitchy they were. I love them. But oh well. Now this track, again, we have a notorious hairpin for accidents here. The first corner is normally not too bad because it's quite fast. However, there is often an almighty pile-up when we come through this hairpin. However, this time around, everybody was very well behaved. A couple of cars went wide at the first corner, but other than that, everybody had been very well behaved up until this point. You can see Daniel in the background there in the black and yellow, at least just sort of ducking out the slipstream, trying to get past some people. It all goes wrong at the top of the hill when a laggy car has a spin, and there are people all sort of flailing over the track trying to avoid him. I believe Daniel got spun out by somebody as well. So there was another fairly substantial accident, not quite as big as the one at the Suzuka race. Husky finds himself out over the curb as they're almost going 3 wide up the hill. Yeah, there's normally something going on the opening lap of any of these races. Husky's having a look at the inside at the final corner. Yeah, there was some interesting characteristics with these cars that a lot of people were finding these cars were quite slidey. They are very little horsepower. I can't quite remember the amount, but it's not a lot of power. There is also not a lot of weight, and you will see them sliding all over the place. They are. Everybody says that. Everybody was saying how twitchy they were, how hard they were to drive. I wasn't having particularly problems. This was Daniel's car that was, pretty broken. Again, he wasn't particularly happy. This is his favourite car on this game, pretty much. And what he was sort of making up places, that's a little bit off the track. The amount of damage he had made it very, very hard to sort of compete. As you can see, despite getting a very good run around that corner, he's got absolutely no speed on a straight line. I don't think he had any sort of internal damage. It was just huge amounts of aero damage, which really does restrict your straight line speed, and it's going to affect your handling. With a car like these, because they are pretty finely balanced vehicles. Managed to kind of swoop around the outside of somebody there, and then they run wide as well. So yeah, Daniel wasn't having the most successful of races as somebody managed to find the wall on that shot. The battle for second place was pretty close. I was quite a long way gone up the road at this point. I managed to dive through the first lap accident and pull out a fairly decent lead. This was the most interesting battle that was going on track at this point. This was, again, much like the Honda Civic race, this wasn't the most exciting of races that we've had. Husky was sort of kind of closing in. These lot were all fairly close on track, but they weren't really they were sort of around the same lap speed, so they weren't really sort of going for overtakes. They weren't having to defend particularly. Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting of races that we've done. I was loving it. It was just a hot lapping session for me in my lovely unbroken Elise. I think pretty much everybody behind me had some form of damage on their car, which the Elises apparently don't like having damage on them. Further back, this blue and orange car, I believe he was caught up in the first lap tangle. I'm not quite sure. There's lots going on there. Was making progress, and one of the few overtakes of this race, there really wasn't much going on. There was a lack of action. There's the yellow car that was broken on the side of the road as well. And this is what happens when you get damage at the start of the race. The field sort of spreads out kind of based on what level of damage you have on your car. It's always going to spread out based on kind of driver skill level and stuff. But when you factor in damage and all of that, yeah, everybody was kind of vaguely in sight of each other as there's another very, very sideways Elise. But yeah, not a lot of overtaking was going on. Further into the race, there was to be a change for, I think this is third position. I think Husky at some point ran into or had a trouble with a back marker and ended up broken as these two are going side by side. Not a good place to be going side by side through that section. The white and red car tries a little bit of a cutback. You can see how much they're moving around through that corner. Yeah, it's quite scary as they run up towards the final corner. Kamino is a track that I quite like. A lot of people don't like it. It's a little harder to overtake here than some. However, there are some pretty big braking zones. This is an odd final corner around here. You think you can take a lot more speed. It looks a lot wider on the exit than it actually is because of all the runoff area for the pit lane. So you see a lot of cars running quite wide and going over the grass. Again, both the Elises are sliding through the first corner as they run down the hill towards the hairpin. Another good overtaking spot. This hill is quite a terrifying section of the track. I think this is where you see Husky's car. Yeah, Husky's car is broken in the wall after a collision with a back marker. So yeah, now they are in third and fourth. And again, the red and white Elise is sliding through this corner. Yeah, the Elises were kind of twitchy by the looks of it. As for me, I had an incredibly uneventful race. It was pretty much a hot lapping session, and with the occasional avoiding of stricken cars. Yeah, I avoided the first lap incident, got through that, had no problems, and pretty much drove away from everybody because my car wasn't broken, so I could go quite a lot quicker. I like this Elise. I really liked driving this car. I don't know what the problem was with it for everybody else, but I guess that's just the way I drive cars. Yeah, everybody has their own driving style, and I guess this car suited me quite well. Not having any damage is also quite useful. Anyway, that is it for this FailRace versus the community. I like cycle reduction. I enjoy doing that sort of in online racing. So yeah, I thought it was quite good fun. But if you do take even a slight bit of damage, it does make things a little bit of a difference in performance, if you like. So some of the racing wasn't quite as close as we have seen. The next FailRace versus the community isn't going to be cycle production. We are going to be running B-class cars, and we are going to be running cars with inline-6 engines. I'm running out of categories of stuff to do. So I thought it'd be interesting. I'll try something new. I'll restrict the cars based on engine. So we're going to have inline-6 engines. They can be engine swaps, so you can swap an inline-6 into a car if you like. I can set up the game so that it will only allow cars with a certain sort of engine, so there will not be able to be any cheating. The race shall take place on a Thursday. It shall be on Thursday the 9th of January at 7 PM GMT time. If you wish to take part in this, then you can sign up on our forums. I'll put a link in the description. You go to the versus the community section and then you will find where to sign up. However, that is it for today, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.